we're going to talk about some of the features that are coming. And of course, these are forward-looking statements, and so you can't always completely be guaranteed. But these are many projects that are in active progress and should be part of the next release or the release following that. So I'd first like to talk about all the work that Serhi has done on files in CKAN. This is big. CKAN has had fairly basic ways of managing files that you actually upload into the system for a long time. And this implements the ability to track the files on an individual basis and then attach them to objects in CKAN afterwards. So this is very important for things like some of the upload first workflows that have been discussed. It's important for cases where you'd like to audit your storage and see what's in my storage and should that actually be there. It's great for being able to store your files across multiple different backends, depending on what might be the most appropriate thing for that. And it's also going to allow things like migrating files between different providers or from local systems. And it is really going to be an enabler of a number of powerful features in CKAN, and it's really very exciting to see this coming. Much of this work actually already exists in CKANX files as a separate extension. And what this does is it adds this functionality sort of alongside the existing CKAN functionality. But what the new pull requests are doing is really baking this into core. Because files are so fundamental to so many of the processes, so many of the data workflows. It's important that this is part of the way that everybody is using CKAN, and this will be one of those important features. Next, I can talk about data dictionaries, and this is something that I've been able to work on fairly closely recently. I worked on the original version of the data dictionary feature that's in CKAN right now, which is fairly basic. You can add a few extra fields, customizable extra fields to individual columns that have been uploaded to the data store. But even though it's a fairly straightforward feature, it is very well loved and is used heavily by many CKAN users. But there are more advanced ways of storing data dictionaries. There are great standards like CSVW, JSON schema, data packages, and Croissant, which I've been working on as well, which has been mentioned before as a standard for cataloging machine learning data sets. So having sort of leveling up CKAN so that it can actually store some of these formats natively and reference them as the way to store additional information about exactly what's in every column of a data set or every table is really going to enable a lot more interesting features, interesting uses of data within CKAN. I'd also, at the same time, like to work on the ability to combine these dictionaries, because it's very common for people to publish data sets in the same shape of other data sets. So being able to define what the data is supposed to look like in one place and then reuse it in multiple places is going to be a great time saver. And it can also be used for things that aren't what we would traditionally seem or think of as a data dictionary. So for things like defining terminology, or extra information about a data set that might apply to multiple data sets. It's great to be able to have this information linked straight into the resource so that people can have access to it and so it can all be updated in one place. So this is, one of the second future feature.
Okay, I'll take this couple next. Another big thing that is coming is the new theme. Already mentioned that this was long overdue. So the new theme has been developed by a dedicated team of designers and front-end developers. This has had their own roadmap and team with funds allocated to it. I think we're in the last stages of the project. That's a demo site which we won't go through because we don't have much time, but essentially this has been a big emphasis on not only making modern and following the current trends on web design, but also focusing on improving the responsiveness and accessibility, which was something that was lacking on the old theme. And the score it's really core to the goals of CKAN of making data accessible to everybody. A lot of effort has been put into try to make it compatible with the existing templates and design, because of course there's a million of them out there, and we don't want to break all sites at the same time. But yeah, if that's something that interests you, there's links there that you can follow up. And then a major area where there has been work recently as well is the search. Traditionally, search in CKAN has been tightly linked to Solr, which is the software that acted as a search index. And that created problems in that basically the API that we were exposing was the Solr API. Solr is a great product, but maybe not the easiest to maintain or deploy. So people were asking, hey, I just want to use a hosted Elasticsearch provider and forget about the search. At the same time, search was only limited to data sets, but there's tons of other stuff that you might want to search in CKAN, like organizations or the data itself or files or whatever. So we're working on a new kind of search backend that tries to tackle all these different challenges. And the goal is to support different backends. So besides the existing Solr one, OpenSearch, Elasticsearch, hopefully a Postgres one as well, which would remove one of the pieces on the equation on how to maintain CKAN, and for small sites might be enough. We want to provide this common search API to search on different parts of CKAN with the same interface and API to search datasets, organizations, or custom entities that extensions define, like pages or whatever. And the current filtering is quite limited in the kind of queries that you can define, and we've tried to get around that with providing SQL interfaces, for instance, from the data store, but that opens a whole can of worms in terms of security and permissions and stuff. So we hope that the new kind of filter interface, which is much more advanced, will cover 90% of queries that people want to do. And at the same time, we are designing it in a way where users can extend all parts of this process, from providers to create a plugin for a search provider that we haven't considered, an interface to index different kind of stuff that are not data sets or one of the entities provided, or build custom features like the one that we were mentioning about special search or stuff, like how to introduce new parameters to the search or how to change the indexing logic or stuff like that.
Yeah, just wanted to add there. So one of the first places that you might see this is in data store, because many of this type of search is very useful if you could do it as part of the regular search interface. As Adria mentioned, having SQL search is something that's just not possible on some sites because of concerns around performance or security. So this makes it possible to have a more functioning, regular search interface, but it also is actually something that we need for performance of paginating large data sets. If you have data sets with 10 million rows or so, you'll notice that the dump interface that exports the data gets slower and slower as it gets towards the end, and that's because we don't have index-based pagination. And so actually the first implementation for this is likely going to be to implement that index-based pagination for data store, so that just the regular dump feature, it gets faster all of a sudden without having to change anything. And as Adria mentioned, I think one of the really exciting things about this is the ability to shrink CKAN. If you could run CKAN with just Postgres, a lot more people would run CKAN. And so if we have the Postgres search backend for this, I think that makes it a lot easier for people to get in and involved.
Yeah, not much more to add to that. If you're interested, all the development is done on this separate repo that eventually will get merged into CKAN. And to that, actually, just if we can finish by talking about a bit the next upcoming versions and where we can expect each of these things. And we're currently at CKAN 2.11, which is a fantastic version that everybody should use if they are starting a new CKAN version. the goal here is to have like a new major version, so CKAN 3.0. But to get there, we need to do a couple of steps first. We will have a hopefully last version on the 2.x line, which will pave the way for 3.0. I mean, the exact same things that will go into each version are described there. There will be like an initial phase of the files work included, so plugins can start preparing for the new files backend. The new theme will be available, not as enabled as default yet, but they will be, it will be able to be turned on via config options. The data dictionary model we hope to be there, and if there's time, we will start introducing these data store search related features that Ian was mentioned. And timelines are always tricky with CKAN because availability changes a lot, but we have the goal of releasing 2.12 by the end of 2025. So hopefully should be there. And then the real work starts with 3.0, but that should include like all the files war, or at least like the initial version of the file wars, the initial version of the new search. The new theme will be then the default on this version. There's a couple of major features, not in terms of like complexity or like development time involved, but in terms of complexity and how to tackle them regarding extension and simplification of the API, which we don't have to go there, but it's something that we have like put ourselves as requirements for this version. And in terms of timeline for 3.0, we really want to have it sometime on 2026. Realistically, it should be around the second half, but we will see. If needed, we will. If we can, we will try to avoid it. But if needed, there could be a 2.13 version if we identify major compatibility issues within the two that we want to breach or something. But it's always easy to maintain just one line of versions. And from then on, sky's the limit, I guess. It's 1 o'clock, so we made it. I just want to finish off with the community channels. Please get involved. As you can see, there's a lot brewing, which has not always been the case in the history of CKAN. So we're at an interesting time now where there's a lot of things going on the community side, on the development side. There's a lot of active development. So it's a really good time to get involved. And you will probably find help on the community channels, but if you want to contact Ian or I or myself directly, please feel free to do so. And we'll see you at the rest of the conference. So thank you for attending. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, and just to say, as it was mentioned, the 20th anniversary of CKAN is an exciting time. If we can, make the stars align and get 3.0 out on the 20th anniversary, that'd be pretty exciting. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, Adria, and everybody for coming.